for most of us, we know, but a quick reminder of what a knowledge cafe is, if we can go to the next slide. A knowledge cafe is a structured conversational process for knowledge sharing in which people discuss different topics at tables. And right now we'll be talking about virtual tables, and they switch periodically. So knowledge cafes are best implemented when you want participants to be exposed to and discuss several topics in a conversational format. So for example, you might want to implement a knowledge cafe when you want participants to learn and hear about experiences from different countries or to discuss different promising practices at different tables. And one key to a successful knowledge cafe is keeping the table groups small so that they can be conversation-based. And in order to do this, we recommend having between 5 to 10 participants per table. And knowledge cafes can be conducted in 5 or so simple steps. The first is to identify what topics you'll be discussing and assign a facilitator per topic or per table. And then participants choose which table they'd like to attend based off of what topic is being discussed. Then each table begins their discussion. This usually lasts between 20 to 30 minutes, but that definitely depends on your objectives and your agenda and the time that you have available. The facilitator that's at each table provides a short overview, hopefully in a participatory and interactive way, and then they pose guiding questions to the group for discussion. So as I mentioned, these are meant to be very conversation and discussion based. Then participants choose another table and the process repeats. When participants choose another table, the facilitators all remain seated and they welcome the new participants that come to their table. And you can repeat this process as many times as your agenda allows. So in the past, we used to think of knowledge cafes as being done in person or solely as an in-person knowledge exchange activity. And we definitely recognize that this activity is best done in person. But the good news is that we are able to conduct successful knowledge cafes virtually using Zoom, which I will talk about on the next slide. So why would you use Zoom for a virtual knowledge cafe? Well, first, Zoom has virtual breakout rooms, and these breakout rooms can be considered your tables, your virtual tables for the knowledge cafe. And in each breakout room, you can have your own screen share function, so the facilitator can share their screen with their small group. And each breakout room has its own chat box, so participants can talk verbally as we're doing now, but also they can use their own chat box to talk. Additionally, the host can broadcast a message to all of the breakout rooms at the same time. This is really useful to let everyone know we have 5 minutes left, for example. Hosts and co-hosts of the Zoom meeting can also bounce back and forth and visit different breakout rooms. This is useful to check in on everyone's progress, see if anyone has questions, for example. And similar to that, participants can also choose to summon the host to come to their breakout room. So if a participant has a question in an in-person knowledge cafe, they would raise their hand and the host would come over, and it's very similar in a Zoom breakout room. They can click a button and that lets the host know to come to their room. And at the end of every breakout or every table discussion, when the host ends the breakout rooms, all participants are automatically brought back into the plenary, which is great. And then finally, you can choose to either randomly assign people or manually assign participants to specific breakout rooms. So while Zoom is definitely a great resource for virtual knowledge cafes, there are some challenges that we also think you should be aware of. The first is that only the host can assign participants to breakout rooms. This isn't a huge challenge, but we do recognize that it does take time for the host to assign people, so we recommend building that time into your agenda. Second is that participants have to accept the breakout room. So when the host starts the breakout rooms, everyone will see a pop-up that comes up on their screen and you have to accept the breakout. This could potentially be confusing for participants who aren't very familiar with using Zoom. But you can mitigate these challenges by verbally explaining exactly what participants can expect at the beginning of the meeting. Third is that you can't record the sessions that happen in the breakout rooms. So if you're recording the meeting, only the discussions that happen in plenary will be recorded. And then finally, when joining Zoom, participants have the option to join via computer audio or by phone. However, if you are joining by phone, you are not able to go into a breakout room as far as we know. But if you have enough people joining by phone, a way to mitigate this challenge is you could have the plenary space be a breakout room for the people joining via phone. So on the next slide, I'll quickly walk through how to do random or automatic assignment to breakout rooms and when this might be useful. So once you've enabled breakout rooms in your Zoom settings, you'll see a breakout icon on the bottom of the screen. When you click that, you'll be able to select however many rooms you'd like, and then you can choose to automatically or manually assign participants to those breakout rooms. And on the next slide, you'll see that random assignment is the easiest option to do logistically speaking, but it means that everyone needs to be discussing the same topic at the same time, or you can use this function when it doesn't matter what topic participants are discussing and they're randomly assigned to a topic. So for example, in the graphics below, you can see that there would be 3 virtual breakout rooms all happening at the same time, and they would all be discussing, for example, how to host a virtual peer assist, like Sarah just mentioned. One challenge to this method of randomly assigning participants to a room is that you've prepped table facilitators to lead the discussions, but they are also randomly assigned to a room. However, the host can manually assign each facilitator to make sure that they're in the appropriate room. And then after about 20 or 30 minutes, depending on your agenda, you would end the breakouts, the host would bring everyone back to plenary, and then they would re-randomize everyone and you would start again with a different topic. So on the next slide, you'll see that you can also host a more traditional knowledge cafe where participants discuss different topics in different breakout rooms at the same time. And you can do this by manually assigning people. You do everything the same as you did for random or automatic assignment, but once you select manual, you can then see another pop-out that comes where you can physically check mark each participant and identify which room you'd like them to go to. So in the next visual example that you'll see, you can see that there would be 3 different rooms, and each room would be discussing a different topic at the same time or concurrently. And in an in-person knowledge cafe, participants would decide what table they wanted to go to based off of what was being talked about at that table or what that table topic was. And in order to mimic this virtually, you would need to know which table participants wanted to go to. So we suggest surveying participants during the registration process and having them identify which table topics they would like to attend so that when you start the meeting, the host knows which room to put each participant in. And then before I wrap up, I want to share some quick tips and tricks for hosting successful virtual knowledge cafes. The first is to prepare, prepare, prepare. So don't forget to prep like you would for any in-person knowledge cafe. So this would include having a clear objective and clear goals, preparing the facilitators, which includes making sure they're comfortable with the platform, making sure that they know how many people they can expect in their small group, that they know how long the discussion should last, how many table rotations there will be, and making sure that they're comfortable with the platform. We also recommend working with the facilitators or developing stimulating guiding questions for each table discussion that would meet your overall objectives and goals. And then also prepping the participants is very important. So we recommend starting the meeting with some general housekeeping information on how to use Zoom and verbally walking everyone through what to expect when the Knowledge Cafe starts. And then practicing on the platform. So we definitely recommend doing a dry run with the facilitators and presenters. And if you're manually assigning participants, you need to know who they are so that you can assign them to the right room that they chose. So it's important to ask people to log into Zoom using their full name and their real name. And then finally, virtual knowledge cafes are best done when everyone is virtual. And I know that at this time, during the COVID pandemic, most of us are working virtual. So this is a great time to try out this technique virtually. However, when we go back to our offices, it's likely that some participants would be in the office and some would be virtual. And hosting a knowledge cafe virtually with a mix of in-person and online participants has a suite of its own challenges, which we won't get into today, but it is possible. But I do want to mention that our recommendation is that a virtual knowledge cafe is best when everyone is virtual. And then finally, if you're interested in learning more about how to host a virtual knowledge cafe, you can see a link here that I've included for a great Zoom tutorial on how to manage breakout rooms. And also we have a link to a great knowledge cafe resource with some general information. So thank you, everyone. And I'll now hand it over to my colleague, Brittany, who will talk about virtual brainstorming.